In a world where political dynasties are rare and true humility is rarer still, one man defied both war and politics to etch his name into the heart of American history. George Herbert Walker Bush wasn't just the 41st President of the United States. He was a World War II hero, a CIA director, an oil tycoon, a family patriarch, and the cornerstone of one of America's most powerful legacies. From the skies over the Pacific to the highest halls of power in Washington, Bush Sr.'s story is one of resilience, service, quiet wealth, and iron-willed diplomacy. But what did the life of this reserved global statesman really look like behind the scenes? How much was he worth? Where did he live? What cars did he drive? And how did he balance wealth, war, and fatherhood in the White House? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the remarkable and often misunderstood life of George H.W. Bush. At the time of his death in 2018, George H.W. Bush's estimated net worth hovered between $25 million and $30 million. His wealth wasn't flashy, but it was solid, deeply rooted in generational advantage, and amplified through strategic investments. Much of his early fortune came from the oil industry, specifically through Zapata Petroleum Corporation, which he co-founded in the 1950s after relocating to Texas. Bush's salary from public service roles, congressman, UN ambassador, CIA director, vice president, and president, was modest by comparison. However, book deals, speaking engagements, and family investments over decades ensured a comfortable financial position long after he left office. He and wife Barbara Bush lived relatively frugally by modern standards, but their net worth placed them firmly among the more affluent American presidents. Born on June 12, 1924, in Milton, Massachusetts, George H.W. Bush was the second child of Prescott Bush, a successful banker and future U.S. Senator, and Dorothy Walker Bush, a strong-willed mother with deep aristocratic ties. From the very beginning, George was raised with a sense of purpose. He attended the elite Phillips Academy in Andover, excelling as a student, athlete, and leader. But war would interrupt his privileged upbringing. On his 18th birthday, Bush enlisted in the U.S. Navy, becoming one of the youngest naval aviators in American history. He flew 58 combat missions in the Pacific during World War II, surviving a harrowing incident in 1944 when his plane was shot down by Japanese fire. For his bravery, he was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. After the war, he enrolled at Yale University, joining the elite Skull and Bones Society, and graduated in just 2.5 years with a degree in economics. While many of his peers pursued cushy careers in the Northeast, George packed up his family and moved to West Texas, seeking independence and opportunity in the burgeoning oil fields. Bush's political career spanned more than 40 years, with stints in nearly every major U.S. government institution. After making millions in oil, he began his political journey as chairman of the Harris County Republican Party. In 1966, he was elected to Congress from Texas. Although he lost 2 Senate races, his national reputation grew. In 1971, President Nixon appointed him U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, and under Ford, he served as chief of the U.S. liaison office in China, a de facto ambassadorial role during a critical thaw in U.S.-China relations. In 1976, he became director of the CIA, a position in which he stabilized the agency post-Watergate. His big break came in 1980, when Ronald Reagan selected him as his vice president. Bush spent 8 years as Reagan's right-hand man before ascending to the presidency himself in 1989. As the 41st president, Bush oversaw the end of the Cold War, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and led a decisive military campaign in the Gulf War, liberating Kuwait from Iraqi occupation. He signed the Americans with Disabilities Act and enacted sweeping environmental protections. Despite foreign policy triumphs, he lost re-election in 1992 amid a domestic recession and his controversial decision to raise taxes after pledging not to. George H.W. Bush's presidency wasn't without controversy. The Iran-Contra affair, a holdover scandal from the Reagan administration involving covert arms deals with Iran, shadowed his tenure, though Bush himself claimed limited involvement. In 1992, he controversially pardoned 6 individuals involved in the affair, including former Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger, drawing sharp criticism from Democrats. Yet perhaps the biggest pivot in Bush's public persona came after his presidency. Once considered stiff and aloof, his image softened over time. His post-White House years were marked by bipartisanship, notably his friendship with former political rival Bill Clinton. Together, they raised millions for humanitarian efforts, responding to natural disasters like the 2004 tsunami and Hurricane Katrina. The Bush family's primary residence for many years was in Houston, Texas, a spacious home in the Tanglewood neighborhood. The house wasn't ostentatious, true to Bush's understated demeanor, but featured elegant brick architecture, manicured gardens, and a comforting Texan warmth. However, their most beloved retreat was the Walker's Point estate in Kennebunkport, Maine, a seaside compound passed down through generations. Perched dramatically on a rocky promontory with sweeping Atlantic views, the estate became synonymous with the Bush legacy. Foreign dignitaries, family gatherings, and summer retreats all played out here in classic New England elegance, with stone walls, wraparound porches, and American flags fluttering in the ocean breeze. Bush's relationship with cars was deeply personal. He wasn't a collector in the traditional sense, but he had a few standout vehicles. As a young Navy pilot, his first car was a Studebaker, but his tastes evolved. He favored American-made models, especially Cadillacs and Lincolns. During his presidency, he was chauffeured in the armored Lincoln Town Car and later in the more secure Cadillac Fleetwood, each modified to Secret Service standards. In retirement, he occasionally drove himself in his Lincoln Continental, preferring smooth, quiet rides over flashy speed. His favorite driving destination? The winding coastal roads of Kennebunkport. Unlike his son, George W. Bush, who relished pickup trucks and mountain bikes, the elder Bush appreciated comfort and dignity behind the wheel. George H.W. Bush's commitment to public service extended far beyond politics. In 1990, he established the Points of Light Foundation, encouraging volunteerism across the U.S. The initiative became one of the largest civic engagement organizations in the world. After leaving office, Bush raised hundreds of millions for disaster relief efforts. Alongside Clinton, he launched the Bush-Clinton-Katrina Fund and Tsunami Relief Fund, a rare bipartisan coalition of compassion. He also supported causes related to cancer research, military families, and literacy, often without publicizing his efforts. His legacy is enshrined in the George H.W. Bush Presidential Library and Museum at Texas A&M University, where his life's mission, to serve, continues to inspire future leaders. George married Barbara Pierce in 1945, a union that lasted 73 years until her death in 2018. Together, they had 6 children, including George W. Bush, who became the 43rd president, and Jeb Bush, former governor of Florida. Their marriage was a partnership grounded in humor, discipline, and enduring love. The couple famously wrote daily letters to each other and were never far apart for long. Outside of politics, Bush enjoyed fishing, golf, skydiving, and reading biographies. Even in his 80s and 90s, he parachuted from planes to mark his birthday, living with a vigor that defied his reserved persona. George H.W. Bush's story isn't just about politics, war, or legacy, it's about honor. A man born into privilege, who chose service over self. A war hero who cried openly. A president who made hard decisions and bore their weight with grace. A father, husband, and global leader who lived not for spotlight, but for duty. If you've been inspired by the quiet courage and enduring humility of George H.W. Bush, hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful political stories, and share your thoughts below. What surprised you most about the life of America's 41st president? Because behind every flag, every speech, and every decision is a human story worth telling.